familiar faces, many new faces from all parts of our wonderful, beautiful community of Nashville. And welcome to the Face of Learning. This is the inaugural public event of the Vanderbilt Center for Nashville Studies, which is a new research center at Vanderbilt University. I am Dan Kornfield, director of the Vanderbilt Center for Nashville Studies. Our mission as a center is to enrich Nashville's political discourse on pressing public issues and to inform public policy decision-making on a wide range of urban social policy issues ranging from education, poverty, housing, race relations, civil rights history, labor and employment, immigration, and other important issues. Before our program begins, I would like to recognize two important members of our center. First is Stephanie Pruitt. Stephanie, where are you? Stephanie is outside doing her work.
Speaking up the registration.
Oh, she's picking up the registration. Stephanie is my right-hand person. She's also, there she is, the center coordinator. Stephanie is a published poet and an arts advocate and educator in the community. And she, along with Marcia, Allison, Devin, and Christy, our team, organized today's event and brought us together, so we're very grateful to you for that. Next is the individual, the well-known civic-minded businessman and Vandy alumnus whose vision, generosity, compassion for humanity, and family foundation created the Vanderbilt Center for Nashville Studies, Mr. Steve Turner.
Keep talking there.
Steve's a great guy. Schools are a microcosm of group relations in society, and the future of group relations in our society very much hinges on how we organize and conduct teaching and learning in our nation's schools. We are very fortunate today to be able to share and discuss the policy implications of the work of two very distinguished Vanderbilt Peabody professors, Ellen Goldring and Claire Smrekar. Ellen and Claire have conducted extensive, exhaustive, rigorous research on the Nashville schools, which is now becoming part of a nationwide project on school desegregation in America that the Vanderbilt Center for Nashville Studies is supporting. And although the problem of school desegregation, resegregation, especially in the time of immigration, cannot be solved today, we very much hope that we will, that our today's panel discussion will guide our community through a very complex maze of decision-making with a lot of important human issues to address. Our good fortune also hails from our very distinguished panel of activists and practitioners who have taken time out of their very busy schedules to participate in today's panel. To them we are very grateful for doing so. We invite you to a reception afterwards that will follow the audience Q&A period when we hope that you will express your views and join the conversation. Here to make introductory remarks is an individual known to all of us. He is president and CEO of Ingram Industries, chairman of the boards of the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center and the Vanderbilt University Medical Center, a member of the Vanderbilt University Board of Trust, a passionate advocate for Nashville and education, and is involved in many civic organizations, too numerous to mention here. Please welcome Mr. Orrin Ingram.
Thanks, Dan. I'll add my welcome and thank you guys for being here today. This is a program of the Vanderbilt Center for Nashville Studies, and our topic this afternoon is a very important one for our city. As Dan mentioned, this session is the inaugural public event of the new Vanderbilt Center for Nashville Studies. The center was established in 2006 thanks to the vision and leadership of Steve Turner. And I feel it's going to become one of the most essential ways the university relates with Nashvillians in the years ahead. Through the center, scholars at Vanderbilt will work with the city of Nashville and with the leaders both inside and outside of government to identify and explore issues that are critical not only for Nashvillians, but for other cities of our nation. Our topic today is the face of learning: desegregation, resegregation, immigration, and Nashville schools. That's a mouthful, but it ties together a set of public policy issues that are timely for Nashvillians at this particular period in our history. Here's what we're going to do over the next hour or so. First, we'll hear from two distinguished Peabody professors, Ellen and Claire. These scholars are working on a book project about school desegregation in several U.S. cities, including Nashville. And their work is being supported by the new Center for Nashville Studies. Next, we're going to hear responses from a distinguished panel of Nashvillians who are experts in fields of education, economic development, race relations, and immigration. They'll help us examine some of the dynamics leading to the changing composition of K through 12 schools in our city. And after that response, we'll welcome your questions. And let's see where the discussion leads us. Just to set the table, I'll observe that in my own view, this theme of our meeting today is central to the work that we all need to be engaged in to strengthen our city and its economy for the years ahead. We know from hard evidence that there's a great cost to having young people who are not educated and who therefore don't have any chance at all for success. We also know the cost to a city like ours of not having a workforce that is properly educated and made ready for the future is unacceptable. We've also learned the hard way that this is a subject that needs to be engaged, that every citizen needs to be engaged in, and certainly every citizen in this room. The city's public defender said recently that he never represented a criminal defendant who completed high school. The chief of police tells us he can't arrest his way out of the crime problem, that the problem must be addressed proactively with children being taught well first so they learn how to be discerning citizens. We also know an educated workforce is the key to our economic growth, and that growth and prosperity are the keys to everything from property values to quality of life. We also don't want to see our schools resegregated. We're well down a path that was the right one, with a commitment as a city to educate every child, regardless of background, race, or circumstances. We do want to see all children succeed, so that our students and their families can all be successful in their lives, and so our city and our region can thrive. And having great schools is not just the job of the school board, or the mayor, or the council, or the teachers. It's the job of the entire city. This is not an idle interest, or just some other cause. It's the most important thing our city does. We need to push and help and advocate and bring all our skills and resources to this task. Those are the stakes for our city and our nation. And that, to me, is the context for what we're talking about this afternoon. Dan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Warren.
Dr. Lower, no one's over the phone now. I'm now delighted to introduce our distinguished panel moderator, a visible leader of our community who needs no introduction. He is CEO of the Public Benefit Foundation and Vice President for Community Action for the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, a former at-large member of our Metro Council and twice elected Vice Mayor of Nashville, and is involved in numerous civic organizations that address a wide range of social issues. Please welcome Mr. Howard Gentry.
Thank you very much, Dan, and it's great to be here. And boy, this is the first time I've been in front of a group like this without any pressure of having to stop in 90 seconds. This is great. It's also great to be here today collectively to be able to discuss something that is very important to Nashville, Tennessee. And we'd like to thank the Senator and Dan for all you do. And of course, Steve, without you, it couldn't have happened. And it is so important that we really look at the face of learning today, because the face of learning looks different than it did when I was in school here 50 years ago. And that is when I started, 50 years ago in Nashville, Tennessee. And the face of learning was different, but is it different? And that is what we're going to discuss today. We're going to discuss desegregation. We're going to discuss re-segregation, immigration, and our Nashville schools. See, when I was in school in Nashville, the face was easy to see. One was one color, one was another. And we were educated in different schools and different environments with teachers that looked like us. And then times changed. And as times changed, the schools started to become more diverse. The buses were rolling though, and kids were having to get up very early in the morning to make that happen. And some cars were rolling out of the county because it happened, and things changed. Now we're looking at a system that is struggling. And it's not struggling because we have bad leadership. It's not struggling because the board and the city is not doing their jobs as it relates to providing education for our students. It's struggling because our communities are still looking like they looked 50 years ago. And how do you integrate a school in a community when the communities are still segregated? These are the things we look at. These are the things we're going to look at today, and we have persons on this panel that can deal with the historical, economic, curricular, policy, and social point of views. And I would like to take this opportunity now to introduce to you the panelists. First, we have presenters and panelists in Ellen Goldring and Claire Smrekar. Ellen Goldring conducts research in improving schools with particular attention to educational leadership and access and equity in schools of choice. She is Professor of Education, Policy, and Leadership at Peabody College, Vanderbilt University. Claire Smrekar, Dr. Smrekar conducts qualitative research studies relating to the social context of education and public policy. Dr. Smrekar is an Associate Professor of Public Policy and Education at Vanderbilt University. And some of you can't see those names from way in the back, so raise your hand, please. Well, Dr. Goldring.
Raise your hand.
All right. Okay. Now, you know, y'all got to follow the rules here. It's gonna get tougher as we go. All right, maybe one who I kind of used to follow the rules is Ed Kimball. He's Vice Chairperson of the Nashville Metropolitan School Board and has been a member of the board for the last 22 years. Mr. Kimball has practiced law in private practice since 1980. Ed Kimball, raise your hand. Thank you. Mark Hill. Mark is the Chief Education Officer at Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, where he is leading the chamber advocacy efforts on behalf of Nashville's public schools. Mr. Hill also serves on the Tennessee Department of Education statewide pre-K advisory council and a colleague of mine at the Chamber of Commerce, Mark Hill. Julia Leiden, there I go, okay, I did. Julia Leiden began her work teaching English as a new or foreign language as a Peace Corps volunteer in Afghanistan, and has continued to be an adjunct professor of anthropology, sociology, and second language acquisition at universities in Florida, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. She is currently the ELL Refugee and Community Liaison for the Metropolitan National Public Schools. Ms. Light. Jose Gonzalez is an instructor of management in entrepreneurship in the College of Business Administration at Belmont University. He is also co-founder of the Connection Americas, where until recently he has served as executive director. Jose. And Richard Dinkins is Chancellor of the Davidson County Chancellery Court, Part 4. Chancellor Dinkins worked as co-counsel on the landmark Nashville school desegregation cases of 1970s and 1980s, and has been awarded numerous awards for his public service, Chancellor Deakins. Now, you have met the panelists, and this is the format. And we are going to make sure that these panelists stick to the time limitations, as I had to do over 50-some-odd times in my past career. We're going to have presenters first, and that is Ellen Goldring and Claire Smrekar. And they're going to talk about their study, their research. Does race matter? The shifting landscape of school desegregation in America's cities. They're going to have 10 minutes, and we're going to have a timer. And the timer is going to be Council Lady at Large, Megan Barrett. We will keep the time. Megan will let you know when you have a minute, and then she will also let you know when you have 30 seconds. We will not gong you out of respect, and but we will let you know when your time is up, but we hope to have a great presentation from you. They will do it jointly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Dan, for all your support. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mr. Orman Ingram. Thank you very much for your introductory remarks. We are delighted to be here as part of this community-wide conversation and honored to be part of this panel. Ellen and I are putting together a book on desegregation, but we're eager to share our findings with the community at large and hopefully inform the debate and the challenge and the opportunities that are before us as a community, as a school district. As part of our talk today, we want to shift the focus a bit away from an exclusive focus on No Child Left Behind. We acknowledge that schools have multiple purposes. And part of those purposes include promoting equity and ensuring civility. And so our discussion today will focus on the community context and the imperatives of community and diversity in schools. I want to start with a little bit of history, and I know that several of people here are part of the history of desegregation in this city, and we're part of the engaged efforts that eventually led to the grant of unitary status on September 25th, 1998, nearly 10 years ago, including Judge Dinkins and Ed Kendall, who are here part of our panel. On that day, on September 28, 1998, Judge Weissman, who was the federal district judge who was part of the court order desegregation in the city, ruled within a matter of minutes that the district was unitary. He said the settlement is in the best interest of black families and is in the best interest of all children and all the citizens of Davidson County. And then he declared the school district unitary and released the district from court-ordered crosstown busing. Now, what were the goals of the district? They were threefold. It was to reduce the lengthy bus rides that children were subjected to under court order, assign students to schools closer to home, and ensure that students would only go to 3 different schools in their K-12 careers. The plan made clear that a high-quality school system will bring multiple benefits to the community, including a skilled workforce, an increase in property values, and expanded tax revenues. It was a shift in priorities. In the words of Metro Schools Director Bill Wise at the time, he said, quote, "We've had one kind of responsibility for 28 years, and now we have another one. In the 1970s, we talked about equal access to schools, which before then had been denied because of the law of separate schooling. Access has been achieved," Superintendent Wise said. "Now we set our target on raising the bar." Against that backdrop then, Ellen and I engaged in a research project beginning in 2001 with the generous support of the William T. Grant Foundation. We wanted to focus on Nashville for an important reason. It represented a best case scenario in many ways. The district and city leaders had been very planful in the way they approached moving to unitary status and a new plan for student assignment. They engaged in years of discussions, focused on improving the schools at a time of vast change. So in many cases, the spirit of cooperation, the focus on improvement, and the many pieces that were involved in the school improvement plan, as it was later known, made Nashville a best case to study. And we were most interested in the impact of the new changes. Included in those changes, of course, were new types of schools in what are so-called, or now called, enhanced option schools and new magnet schools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we found with respect to the enhanced option schools. With the shift to closer to home schooling, the school board recognized that many of the new neighborhood schools would be located in neighborhoods of high poverty and social isolation. So the school board intentionally designed those schools to have additional services, additional health and social services, additional school days. First, 40 additional school instructional days in the summer. That was later reduced back to 20 additional school days. And smaller class sizes. All of those elements were a direct recognition of the problems of poverty, of teaching in high poverty schools. And again, the district knew that some of these neighborhood schools would be high poverty schools and recognized the array of resources that were necessary to make kids successful in those schools. So we set out to examine those schools closely. First, we established a case study approach, meaning that I spent days and days and days, over months and months and months, in those schools, interviewing principals, teachers, parents, observing classrooms, spending time in the front office, which is my research method. Students know you learn so much when you just sit in the front office and observe interactions among teachers and parents. 0 minutes.
We'll give you one.
Okay, wow, okay.
You just took it away from Mr. Campbell.
Okay. Mr. Grant. All right, I just want to share a few of our findings then. First, the way in which neighborhoods matter in the lives of children. And I have it written out for you because I wanted to capture the voices of the teachers we interviewed. So here's one. First, I'm going to read a little bit about the children. The children at this one enhanced option school, which I call Olive. It's a pseudonym. The children at Olive, aged 5 to 10, live in the social space defined by their neighborhood and their school, framed by a half-dozen city blocks. Their isolation is real. Few families have ready and reliable transportation in this community. These children have learned to adapt to the social structures concentrated in their neighborhood, acquiring the skills needed to survive in a community fractured by drug and domestic violence, underemployment, and poverty. They often care for themselves and younger siblings. They tend to watch a lot of television. They are accustomed to ducking away from the sounds of gunshots. As the Olive Community Center director observed, these kids are street smart because they're on their own. Nobody raises anybody here. That's just a little quick vignette about the children. And I just want to quickly move to some images that were drawn by teachers over repeated interviews. Without exception, teachers identified the culture of survival as a central feature of their experiences with the children and parents at Olive School. This is an account from one third-grade teacher, but it's typical of all the teachers' impressions that were shared with us. Quote, "The students come in from the weekend and tell me how this person has been shot in the middle of the street, how they have to run in and take cover. It is like a war, a battle over there in that neighborhood, and they are trying to survive. That is why we have so many young children trying to be the adult, trying to lead. And the problems that we have here are because over there in the neighborhood, they are learning to survive." And finally, we did a lot of interviews with family resource center staff, with nurses, with social workers, with people in the community. And over it was the regret of the lack of diversity in the school. That before, under the court-ordered busing, while this was not a middle-class mixing with low-income children, there was some socioeconomic diversity, working class families and more lower-income families. They were Kurdish and Hispanic mixed with African-American and white. And I just want to share this comment because I think it's so vital. In the integration of different cultures or different socioeconomic backgrounds, different races, just all the differences, you had a much more balanced classroom. This is from a teacher. It was easier to manage the discipline. Of course, when discipline is easier, the other things come easier too. The kids had something different to see and aspire to before. In conclusion, our findings suggest that despite the smaller class sizes and an array of social and health services at these schools, The penetrating and punishing effects of neighborhood poverty undercut these efforts. As a guidance counselor at One Enhanced Option observed, think of this quote, "We have so much here, and it still isn't enough." Our findings suggest that neighborhood context matters. Concentrated poverty leads to concentrated disadvantage in the social and geographical space shared between high-risk neighborhoods and nearby schools. We conclude that policymakers must take account of the neighborhood-level conditions that diminish the impact of full-service schooling efforts in these high-poverty neighborhoods. These initiatives will require more than a review of free lunch percentages as a measure of neighborhood poverty. Our work suggests that these data, free and reduced lunch, often overlook the social health of a neighborhood school and the relative social stability or instability of its community. These efforts must be coupled with an urgency that matches the momentum to shift to neighborhood schooling. We conclude that one of the most important education reforms is housing reform. We share a common viewpoint regarding the important role of education for sustaining equity, promoting opportunity, and creating civic virtues. It is this idea of civic engagement that binds us and brings us together today. Thank you very much.
Absent the gavel and the title, I feel helpless up here. But we are going to move now within the time limit, and I'm not being mean, it's just that we want to have the public an opportunity to converse with us. So we're going to move on, and the timer is right in front of you, so
I can't answer. As Claire noted, we focused on two aspects in our study, enhanced option schools and magnet schools, and I'm going to address briefly magnet schools. At the introduction, the question was asked, how do you integrate schools when our communities are still segregated? And the answer to that question in the busing era was magnet schools. Magnet schools were established to attract middle-class white families into the inner city and to prevent white flight. During the court-ordered busing in Nashville that Claire referred to, all of our magnet schools had separate race-based lotteries. I'm not sure you're familiar with that. There was a lottery for white children and a lottery for black children. And thus the racial balance or the racial mix or diversity for the magnet schools was guaranteed to all parents. We're going to fast forward to today, to unitary status. Here are the trends regarding magnet schools in Nashville. We have 3 academic selected magnet schools. The academic selection magnet schools, those are magnet schools that have academic criteria for entrance, have tipped, and they are predominantly white. The new magnet schools and the other magnet schools that do not have academic selected criteria have tipped, and they are predominantly black. In addition, almost all of the magnet schools have students that are of higher social class than the district average. And lastly, Latino enrollment rates in magnet schools fall far short of their representation within the district. In fact, it is almost the case that Latinos and new immigrants are not engaged in the school choice process at all. Some of the magnet schools, mostly the academic selected ones, are oversubscribed with long waiting lists, and others are undersubscribed. Why did this happen? How did this happen? Especially given that the board in 1998 reaffirmed its commitment to diversity, even though they could not use race in student assignment to magnet schools. And this is a quote from that time. The school board reaffirmed its commitment to diversity in the Unitary Status Agreement, stating that it is an important educational tool, particularly in terms of developing mutually understanding, respect, and knowledge. The plan does not include any specific ratios for schools, although new attendance zones reflect, and this is a quote from the board minutes, a consideration given to demographic diversity. So again, we asked ourselves why this trend in desegregation and tipping in the magnet schools. I don't have time, I don't think, to go into all of our findings, but here are a few of the major highlights. One is a lack of transportation in this district. African Americans are choosing magnet schools as their close-to-home school option, and they indicate in surveys that convenience and safety are very important to them. While whites predominantly choose the schools because of the academics, because obviously they're not very convenient given that there's no public transportation. Second issue. When thinking about magnet school choice, we have to ask ourselves, what is the push and what is the pull? In other words, is there innovation, authentic choice, or some type of unique educational opportunity that is attracting parents to the school? Under court-ordered busing, white parents were choosing between often, like at middle school, they were often choosing between a bust-in option or a magnet school. So magnet schools were a real choice for them. Today, parents are choosing between a closer-to-home option and a magnet school, which is often very far away with no transportation. So we ask again, what is the pull to entice parents to come into the city to go to magnet schools? Second, what are the curricular offerings, the programs that are being offered in the schools to attract a diverse set of parents to the magnet schools? Third, the tipping point. We know that as soon as schools begin to tip to one race or the other, it is very difficult to attract parents from the other race. In interviewing principals, they commented, and this is a quote, "It is hard for a parent to choose the school if they know their child will be the only white student in a class." White parents go and visit magnet schools. They're interested. But when they look at the enrollment, and especially enrollment by grade, there may not be any more white children in their specific grade. Parental involvement. Parental involvement is higher in magnet schools. So despite the fact that there is not a geographic neighborhood to magnet schools, all research pretty consistently documents the extent to which schools are able to involve parents even though there's not a geographic neighborhood. Lastly, we ask the following questions about magnet schools. What considerations went into the decisions of both the themes, the placements, and the enrollment policies of magnet schools under unitary status? And how do those decisions need to be different than what they were when there was court-ordered busing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we're going to move to the panelists, and each panelist will have 4 minutes for opening statements.
We reduced their time.
I hope you feel bad about that.
And I skipped the whole page.
You know, one thing that I was asked to do by Dan is to make sure that we end on time. So we have to make adjustments. Ed Kendall will be our first person to begin with opening remarks.
I don't think a lawyer can say anything in 4 minutes.
Let's use up 15 seconds.
I'm going to take those to the staff. That's all I need. I want to first of all thank you and thank all of you for being here. I think this is one of the most important meetings that I have attended, and I want to thank the Center for inviting me and Mr. Ingram and all those involved here. I would like to first just give an overview of the statistical demographic, demographic information that most of you probably already know. But prior to 1971, when we had the first busing order, there were approximately 95,000 students in our metropolitan school. By 1972, 1 year later, we had about 65,000 students. In other words, we had about 30,000 students leave the system after that first busing order. Before this mass exit, the makeup pretty much mirrored the racial and socioeconomic promise of the general population. From about 1983 up until 1995, the second crosstown busing order, which was commonly referred to as agreement in principle, the school population was around 69,000 to 70,000 students. The white population ranged between 55 and 62%. The black population ranged between 30 and 35%. Hispanics and others represented a very small group. The present school population is approximately 34% white, 48% black, and 14% Hispanic, and 4% other ethnic groups. The number of what we call farm, and that nothing to do with agriculture, that's free and reduced meals, students has increased to about 65 to 70%. As we all know, the Metropolitan School Board is presently engaged in a rezoning proposal that has been presented by the administration. The various issues that are raised in that are space utilization, choice options, transportation costs, enhancement for parental involvement. While the board is not preparing this plan, obviously we have an oversight responsibility for the general welfare of our city and our school system. And therefore it's being presented to the board. Many of you who watch our public broadcast know that we are taking this very seriously and we're having a lot of serious debate. However, I must admit that if you look at our board meetings, we talk for hours about the same subject, so I hope we're not rushing too much today. And that's no fun to you. But a lot of the priorities, and the board is made up of people who represent different constituencies throughout the community. And obviously, we have different opinions about certain priorities, and we get into those issues about diversity, choice, and parental involvement. And we must talk about them. And we had a very in-depth discussion the other night, and I think that was a very healthy discussion. But there are two basic questions that I think this community must answer if we're to move forward in a constructive way. One is, does this community truly embrace diversity as a compelling interest? And the second question is, do we believe that racial, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity represent an integral part of the education of a child? I certainly believe that, and I think many of you have heard me express that many times. Some questions that are posed in the Goldring Smrekar report are, what priorities drive policies, racial and socioeconomic diversity? I think choice. You know, years ago, there was an article in the paper that when Mayor Phil Redison was mayor, and I was chairman of the board, that we were at odds about choice. I've always supported choice. But I believe it has to be accessible choice for all children, and that's the key. Just saying, well, you've got choice and you have to provide your transportation really does not amount to choice. Parental involvement. Now, I have a little different perspective than some on that. We tend to measure parental involvement by how many parents attend PTAs and PTOs, et cetera, at the school. My question, how many parents address the needs of the child? Parental involvement to me is with the child, not necessarily with the school. The school is important as well. I think one of the very important things that are mentioned in the report that has been presented, I call it the Goldring Smrekar report, is the overwhelming structures of some of our poverty-ridden communities certainly override parental involvement in many instances. And I hope we'll talk about that more later.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. I appreciate it.
I thought I had one more minute.
No, sir. Next is Mr. Mark Hill.
I'll go ahead and give it a try. First of all, there are several folks on this panel that had personal experience with some of the struggles our community's had over the past 25, 30, 40 years. I share in that I was a student that grew up in the school system, and I remember vividly in the early 80s anticipating going to Antioch High School, and at that time there was the Board of Education struggling to decide whether or not to close the school. And it seems ludicrous now that you close a high school in the fastest growing part of the county that is now the most diverse part of our city, but that's what we were in the mid-80s. And I was possibly being sent to Hillwood, which is probably an hour and a half bus ride away. It turns out in that case, the community worked with the school board to promise to work on diversifying housing and to try to integrate as a community, and the school board gave the community reprieve, and it turns out it really is one of our success stories as a city. So I just mentioned that to you because as intractable some of these problems are, and they seem to be, there is hope, and I hope we were able to solve this together. Let me say that re-segregation should concern us all. And really, it's because we do hold diversity as a value. And we do have to acknowledge, though, that things are a bit different here in 2007 than they were even 15 years ago, in that we have a large group of kids, now 14-15% Hispanic in the school system. That number is growing by leaps and bounds. And as a school system, as a school board, you all may be working through this now, but you really haven't had a conversation about what diversity means in that new context. And that's really important for us to tackle. From an economic development standpoint, diversity is a value as well. In fact, a couple months ago, I was in a meeting, an economic recruitment meeting. A company, a financial services company, was looking at the Nashville region, not just Nashville in the city, but also in the surrounding counties, and possibly relocating a large number of jobs, since they were obviously looking at Nashville and a number of other cities. K-12 public education was high on their list. They wanted to assess how we were doing. And so as we talked about that, they obviously had done their homework. They knew how our surrounding counties are doing with education. They, I'm sure, had looked at some of our positives and our challenges, particularly around the child left behind. And so I was prepared to sort of talk about the progress we were making in metro schools and some of the plans we were having to undertake to redesign high schools, positive things that are happening in the school system. And they asked me about how diverse is the student population in your school systems in the Middle Tennessee region. And I thought about it for a while, and because we had sort of been trained as policymakers, folks involved in the public process, that at-risk children, ELL children, are often incur an extra cost, and they do. It takes more to educate those children. But they were really looking at it from an asset perspective, in that as a large employer who was servicing folks from around the country, they wanted a diverse workforce, but people their customers can identify with. Because as the demographics of this country change, they're interested in hiring and recruiting workers from that area that can match that growing demographic. And so really, it was sort of a light bulb moment where in metro schools, if we do this right academically, we graduate more students of all kinds of diverse backgrounds, we're going to have an incredible talent pool that companies will want to tap into as we move into our region. And so that's an exciting opportunity. Obviously, it's a challenge in the short term to make sure those kids are up to speed academically, but it really is an opportunity in economic development.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Julia? Lyden?
Get this closer. I guess everybody can hear me now. First of all, I'd like to say that on behalf of Dr. Luana Shelton, coordinator of the ELL program here in Nashville, we are very grateful that we have been invited to participate in this forum on such a timely topic. Dr. Shelton had a previous engagement long-standing in Washington, D.C. with the Department of Education, so she couldn't be here, and I am her designee. Now, let me tell you about our ELL students in terms of who they are and what services Metro Schools is providing for them. Metro Schools' ELL program began 30 years ago in response to a Supreme Court decision which said that children in public schools whose first language is other than English must receive instruction in a language which they can understand. At the time of the beginning of the program here in Nashville, we served mostly Korean and Iranian immigrant children, as well as Vietnamese and Laotian refugee children. Our ELL population has changed through the years as different refugee groups from Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe were resettled in this area. Our Hispanic population did not begin to settle in this area in significant numbers until the mid to late 1990s, as employment opportunities for their families grew and became more available. Now, with respect to the initiation of services for the ELL student, there is the identification and registration process. Registration requirements for any student in the United States who does not speak English or is from a non-English language background, we use the term NELD, are set by federal regulation and apply to all school districts in the country. Whenever a new family shows up at any metro school, they are asked on the registration form if the child speaks English or is non-English language background. If so, they are referred to the International Student Registration Center, which is at the new ELL program office. And there, the registration of the student for school begins, as well as an assessment of the child's English language proficiency. And that is in all 4 skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. When a family arrives at the registration center, their health and residence and age documents are verified, and if complete, the registration process begins following established district procedures. English proficiency is assessed and school placement is made. If students are not fully proficient in English, they are assigned to an ELL center nearest their home. Currently, we have 44 ESL center schools, or ELL center schools. If students are assessed as proficient in all 4 skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, they are assigned to their zone school. The registration paperwork is forwarded to the student's assigned school, and final placement of children in a particular class or classes is left with the schools. I have several other facts here that might be of interest to some people, but I'll hold that for the end in the Q&A or even more informally. But thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Jose Gonzalez.
Okay, Howard, I do my bestest speaking in Spanish, so I hope you don't mind.
Está bien.
He can translate for us. No, real quick, I just want to make 2 points, 2 quick points. One is on the issue of diversity. I think that certainly one cannot have a conversation today in Nashville, in Tennessee, or across the state about the Latino population, about the growth of the Latino population, without the whole issue of immigration being at the center of that conversation. And certainly, we all are very aware of the very negative tone and very connotation that this conversation has taken nationwide, and our inability as a country to address it, to embrace it, and to deal with it. And that's not what I'm going to talk about. But I do see that there is a tremendous opportunity today, as the district has become more diverse, as our children are the ones that are interacting with children of different cultures, of different countries. And we have a tremendous opportunity here, statewide and nationwide, to work with the children, because those children, when I go and I visit some of the, especially the elementary schools, I see children from all different types of nationalities sitting at the same table, having lunch, having conversations. To them, this whole conversation that we're having as adults is a foreign thing. They are friends. They are growing with people that look different, that speak different, that have different cultures, that eat different things at home, and so we need to really capitalize on that opportunity as we discuss, talk, and address the issue of diversity in schools. The second point, real quick, is the issue of parent involvement. I was not surprised to see the Latino underrepresentation in magnet schools. Absolutely. Well, parents are not engaged, are not involved. We have there another tremendous opportunity to reach out, to educate, and to bring parents. And I'm happy to say I have, over the last 5 years, just seen the tremendous efforts that the administration here locally has done to engage and to bring in foreign parents in teaching them how to interact with the system. There's several initiatives going around town from COPLA, the Comité de Padres Latinoamericanos. It's a Latino PTO sort of group that's coming together on a regular basis and a lot of it is just to educate about the resources and to educate the parents about how things are working. Certainly there's bilingual liaisons working in the school system, so I am pleased to see the changes and the movement in a positive direction that we have had. There's obviously a lot to do, a lot more potential, but so again, those are my 2 points. Embracing diversity. The kids are our greatest asset. Let's understand that they don't have those preconceived notions that we have, and they are now having that conversation in the tone that we're having as adults. So let's leverage that.
Thank you very much. Chancellor Diggins.
In order to save a few seconds, I'll say amen to everything that went on here. I tell you one thing that this community should be clear on is that we do not want to go back way that things were. The struggle itself was liberating for a lot of people, and when Judge Wiseman made that declaration in 1998, one of the findings that he made as an element of having the system declared unitary was that the community could be trusted, okay? And not just, and I would hope that as a community, we treat that as a trust, not of a federal judge trusting us, but our children trusting us. That is a pledge that we made on the lives and the futures of our children, that we would not fail them. These researchers have done remarkable work. I want to thank you for supporting that. It's very exceptional that they have the opportunity and the forum for this, and I appreciate that well. I hope you will put it on the website or whatever. It won't hurt your book sales that much. If you all could just read it, what it shows is we do have a tremendous opportunity as a community to address some of the remnants that remain. The 1998 plan, nobody is going to tell you that that is a bad plan. It was not a plan that was set up for failure. There have been parts of it that have not been implemented. There have been parts of it that have not been implemented fully. But I think that in terms of a framework, and there are a lot of nuances about what a neighborhood means, and a neighborhood in Green Hills means a totally different reality and a totally different perception than a neighborhood in East Nashville. And the resources, parental resources that are available to some neighborhoods are so different than parental resources. And so when you talk about resources, are you only talking about the resources that the council appropriates and things of that sort? What other resources are there? I do think, lastly I'll say this, I do think that the board should proceed with all deliberate speed, which became all deliberation and no speed. In making changes to the plan that is in place now, the zoning plan. I don't think the population depression in Antioch means that the whole zoning needs to be revisited right now. We need to really take the time and do that right.
Thank you. Now this is where it gets good. And this is the part of the panel discussion where time is going to be of essence, but the community's questions are also going to be very important. We want to ask the community when the time comes to ask questions. We appreciate your comments, but we can discuss things in the reception following this. But what we want to do is for you to come to the mics in a few minutes with questions. And they don't need to be explained. Just ask your question, and then we'll go at it from the panel's position. Now here's what I want to do with the panel. And you are under a 1 minute time. But it's important that you do this because we'll have more time for the public. And I'm going to start with Chancellor Dickens because we started on this end first. And I'm going to ask you one question, And in 1 minute, I'd like to have your response. Does race matter?
Absolutely, absolutely. If race, well, I just look at the moderator here who served 2 terms as vice mayor. That was no accident. He was the first black politically in the legislative branch to win a countywide race. That did not happen because people did not know him and people were not comfortable in voting for him. That comes about as a result of black folks and white folks and Latinos and Asians and what have you talking with each other and realizing the common interests. Race and sex and so on so often are used as wedges and force us apart. But if we meet each other and talk with each other, we realize that we have more things in common as citizens and as people than we have differences of culture. And in the area of public policy, you deal with common interests and not cultural differences.
Thank you, Chancellor. Jose Gonzalez, does race matter?
Race matters. Race matters a lot. We are 1 minute, but I'm just thinking of the world that we live in today. How, with technology and with move towards globalization, how diverse, how the exposure that children today are going to have to in their professional careers as they grow up in their jobs is so different to what all of us or people who are older than us had the opportunity or their realities are so much more different. And to the extent that we can embrace that diversity, that we can understand the diversity, that we can be able to learn to interact with different cultures, and that we can value that capacity building that comes from hearing different opinions and interacting with people that are not like us, we are going to be a better society. And it's crucial that we embrace it and move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Lyon.
Well, from a practitioner's standpoint, I would say race does matter. We have to focus on race and various other kinds of ethnic or economic diversity if we want to truly evaluate if all of our children are on the road to success. And in that respect, I say yes, we must stay focused on all the various subgroups in our population that we're serving.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
It matters, and it matters because race has been used as a reason to exclude folks in the past, in our past, and we have to face up to that and acknowledge that. And so the Chamber, for example, is taking a lead and being very interested in being a part of the discussion of how we have more economic diversity, how we reach out to small minority businesses to make sure that they have equal opportunities to participate in the prosperity of the city. At the same time, challenge a way to the school system to make sure every student across the city has the same opportunities to succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. 1 minute.
Yes, race matters, and I want to echo Chancellor Deacons on that. I think when we look at race in Nashville, it really correlates poverty, and it correlates with socioeconomic conditions. So we can talk about it in a socioeconomic standpoint or a racial standpoint, but it matters. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here today. One of the things that the report that Dr. Smrekar talked about that, and I think this is one of the most important statements that was made by a teacher or somebody in that report, and it said they had something different to see and to aspire to be or not to be. When we racially isolate children, they don't have that opportunity, and that's what we have to not do proactively.
Thank you, Counselor.
Race matters because race is part of the cultural diversity that is the social context of education. Schools don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in neighborhoods and cities and in states. And so I think it's important that those classrooms are reflective of the cultural, ethnic, religious, socioeconomic diversity, many of my students are here and they'll recognize this question, what is the purpose of public education? But don't say anything. The purpose goes well beyond proficiency. It goes to sustaining a democracy and building a civil society. And how can you promote democracy and sustain a civil society without building your schools as models of those contexts, of models of diversity? In the absence of diversity, you build ignorance and hatred at the extreme. So yes, race matters.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back and quote from the Board of Education minutes, June 23rd, 1998, because it summarizes my opinion why race matters. It is an important educational tool, diversity is an important educational tool, particularly in terms of developing mutual understanding, respect, and knowledge. Three things: mutual understanding, respect, and knowledge. I think we do a disservice when we only talk about the correlation between social class and race, because race and culture and ethnicity matters as a totally different for mutual understanding, respect, and sources of knowledge that are not necessarily correlated or have anything to do with socioeconomic status or class. They have gifts to share in their own right. So yes, race matters.
Thank you. Now, here we're kind of back on time. And here's what we want to do. We want to allow the persons in the audience who have questions to please come ask. If you want to ask the question to a specific person, that is fine. If the panelists, other than the one asked, wants to make a response, that's fine too. I would like to ask you to keep your questions brief, and panelists, keep your responses as brief as possible. Please step forward to the microphones. We have microphones on both sides, and we would like to be say your names so we know who you are.
I'm Lee Stewart. I work for Metro Social Services. My child was fortunate enough to win the lottery, go to magnet schools. Mr. Campbell, you mentioned about not everything happens, to paraphrase you, not everything happens on campus or behind the school doors. There are between 7,000 and 9,000 grandparent caregivers and others. You know, they can't get to the schools. Doesn't mean they don't want to. What are your plans to take some of these PTO, meet the teacher, IEP meetings, things to the parents or caregivers rather than have everything happen on campus?
Thank you for your question.
Well, that happens somewhat in our system now. I don't know that it happens enough. And we do have PTO meetings and PTA meetings and parent meetings with grandparents and others in the communities, in some of our non-contiguous county zones. I think my information that I have is that they're generally more successful when they're not at the school, even in that community. And when we bring them into the inner city community, that they're more successful when we have them in the community projects and other areas of community buildings in those communities. But that's happening, and I hope the school system will continue that and emphasize it.
Is there any other panelists that wants to address that? Chancellor?
Yeah, let me just use that as an entree. Say what's up, please. Every segment of the community not only has a stake in these issues, but has a role in the resolution. I see churches on every corner that have buses that roll on Sunday and are parked Monday through Saturday. And I've often wondered why some of the churches couldn't use their buses and transport children or transport parents and things like that. I see churches not used that could be there for after-school tutoring programs and things like that. But I think that as a community, we have to take on the responsibility and not shift that on the board and then complain when the board doesn't do something or the council doesn't fund it like they want it funded and all that, we have a lot of resources that we can bring to this fight that we are not bringing.
Thank you. Any other responses, comments? Any other questions from the audience? Oh, and come on up. Y'all can just line up here. I thought you weren't going to ask me. Go ahead.
National schools have some of the highest dropout rates in the country, and certainly in the state of Tennessee. Can you tell me, can you give me sort of a historical context for that?
Who would you like to answer?
Anybody can answer.
Anybody other than Mr. Kendall? Mr. Kendall probably, I don't know. Is there anyone else that has the facts on that? Is anyone? Mr. Kendall, do you have any?
Well, I don't have any facts, year by year. Obviously, that has been one of the big concerns that we have, especially in our high schools. And that's not necessarily true in every high school. There obviously are higher dropout rates and some and others. However, I saw on the internet today, right before I came here, that we're not in the bottom 5 states of Tennessee. I looked for Tennessee. I thought it would be there, but it was not. Georgia and a bunch of other states. But and that's a positive. Hopefully, we're in the top 10 of having the attendance. But I don't have those statistics. But that is a focus. That is one of the major focuses that the present school board and school administration is attempting to address, and that is the dropout rate.
Thank you to my left.
One thing,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
just in that regard, there is some wisdom that says that kids actually drop out in the 4th and the 5th and the 6th grades. They just aren't able to do anything about it until the 9th and the 10th grade. So the more resources we put at the lower and the middle school grade levels, I think the high school dropout level will begin to take care of itself.
Thank you. Anyone else want to respond to that? Go ahead.
I'm Teresa Talnick, and my question is pretty short. It's to Professor Smrekar. At the end of your talk, you said the most important education reform is housing reform. Please say more. Nashville, because of its outstanding reputation within the Metropolitan Development and Housing Authority, MDHA, has been awarded 4 Hope 6 revitalization grants. Now, there are problems with Hope 6. I'm not suggesting that this is the panacea answer to traditional public housing, but Hope 6 tears down, with a grant from HUD, tears down the old traditional public housing and replaces it. Now, this is part of the problem, with only about 40% of capacity. That's a big problem. You need lots and lots of Hope 6 initiatives, obviously, to capture the folks who need that public housing. But it's preferred because it's far less dense and safer and provides an opportunity for families to reach self-sufficiency with a whole array of social services. It has been criticized because of some of the onerous aspects and some of the eligibility criteria. Many of those cases, those criteria have been relaxed. But we have seen a dramatic difference in communities that have been impacted by Hope 6 in terms of the climate and culture of the neighborhood schools. So part of our study focuses on this question. When you change the neighborhood, how does that change the neighborhood school? And there are some very interesting effects of Hope 6, almost unintentional, on neighborhood schooling. So again, I'm not endorsing it as the panacea, but there are elements of the Hope 6 projects, and many of you know them: Vine Hill, Sam Levy, Preston Taylor, and now John Henry Hale. And we have been focusing on the shifts in kind of the patterns of parent engagement and parent-school relationships over the past 4 years as those programs have rolled out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to briefly address that. I want us to think about something. I want to look at that in a little different way. How do schools impact housing? Look at it the other way around. Schools, to me, are a catalyst for where people choose to live in many instances. If we have a poverty community where we are zoning every child who lives in that community to a particular school, what is the likelihood that middle-class parents and upper middle-class parents will move into that community? On the other hand, if they have You know, you have an optional school where they can continue to go to schools in the suburbs or the magnets or other forms of schools of choice, then they're more likely to move into those communities. So we may be able to help change communities by where we put schools and where we zone kids and where we allow kids to go. That's something to think about.
And just to piggyback on, indeed, some of the Hope 6 initiatives across the country have included a charter school as part of the community revitalization. And I should have underscored that these Hope 6 communities are mixed income communities. Some of the units are rented at market rates and others at a subsidized rate. So the whole idea is to build a mixed income and then to put a new school in that community. Again, building the idea of socioeconomic integration.
Thank you. Goldring.
I just wanted to support Mr. Kendall's point because the research does show that in urban cities, many of the magnet parents are living in diverse neighborhoods and often living in neighborhoods that have on average lower socioeconomic status than they themselves have based on their occupation. So it does suggest that magnet schools are a way to maintain diverse neighborhoods, mixed class neighborhoods, and keep middle class families in urban centers.
Thank you. To my right.
My name is Cesar Muelas. I have 2 children in public schools, kindergarten and second grade. I have a 2-part question to complete the big picture of education in Nashville. Considering the total population of school-age children, what percentage goes to public school, what percentage goes to private school? And the second part is compared to what you described as the purpose or mission of public education, what is the purpose or mission of private education?
All right. First question is does anybody have an answer what percentage of public and private?
The private school enrollment is about 18% or 19%, and nationally it's 10%. So we're almost double the national rate. It has been pretty steady for the last, I think, 20 years, let me say. Although we have more private schools, but we have more population. So I think that rate has stayed fairly steady at 18 to 19%.
And the second question is
What is the mission of private schooling?
what's the mission of private school?
There's all sorts of private schools. There's religious-based private schools, which is a very large percentage. There's independent private schools. And it's in our Constitution that parents have freedom of choice how to educate their children. However, I do think one of the things that this community does not speak about, we're talking about things we need to talk about race, I think we really need to ask why, what is the perception of the public schools such that so many parents in certain neighborhoods send their children to private schools? Number one, why is the white enrollment in the city schools so much less than the percent of white population in the city? And then why does the white population continue to decline? And I think this has a lot to do with both economics, housing, as well as education. We don't have time to get into it, but if you think about how parents make choices, and the thing that drives parent choices most is informal social networks. Who you talk to in churches, who you talk to at the employment, who you talk to at the supermarket, who you talk to at daycare. There is a very strong social press of this community, and I'm not from here, so I felt it when I moved in. There's a very strong social press in certain neighborhoods and in certain communities about the public-private schools.
Thank you. There's no one else in the panel to my left. And I know some of the answers will kind of spark debate, but the only debate that we're going to have is between the panelists, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Marcia Edwards. I'm the CEO of the Martha Warren Center in East Nashville, located in James Homes. I was very interested to hear the discussion around neighborhood matters. That is very clearly what we see on the ground every day. My question to the researchers were, in the other cities that you studied, did you see places where there was a better connection between community, school, and family?
Thank you.
Well, in the book that I referenced, the other case studies are actually conducted by other researchers, but Ellen and I have been in other cities and have focused our efforts on better understanding their own magnet schools. I think Nashville does so many things right. I think we need to celebrate those. And one of those assets that we want to underscore includes community centers like Martha O'Brien and others. They do an incredibly courageous job of connecting families and children to creative and safe and powerful contexts where they provide a place to go after school and on the weekends. That said, we did find that in some communities, those organizations, those centers suffer from some of the same penetrating effects of poverty, and sometimes they become places where fighting and sort of the discordant relationships in the community roll right into that community center, just as they roll into the school. So we want to acknowledge the incredible work that those centers do. There are many of them sprinkled across the community, but also to acknowledge that they can't do it alone.
Thank you. To my right, yes. And you're going to direct your question to Mark Gilroy. No, I'm just kidding.
This can go to anyone. I'm Nancy Cannon. I'm an undergrad at Vanderbilt University. And I was wondering, we talked about how a problem is that we're having a tendency to going back to the two phases of education, the black and the white phases of education. And I was wondering if, in addition to addressing the housing, and in addition to going to these informal social events like churches and stuff like that, if we've explored any other possible solutions to addressing this problem of diversity, in particular to problems related to curriculum. Like, I know that there's a larger percentage of white and Asians in math and science courses, in honors math and science courses, as opposed to Latinos and African Americans, and I didn't know if there were any solutions that have been explored as far as that goes.
I know part of the plan that the court approved in 1998 was based on the hope, the assumption that some desegregation gains could be achieved through programs. For instance, in the Whites Creek cluster, that was set up to be sort of like an allied health cluster with Nashville is one of the leading healthcare places in the nation. And as we all know from paying our insurance bill, healthcare is the only thing that's making money these days. So there are a lot of jobs in the healthcare field that are not physicians or nurses and all, and so what we thought was that we would set up the K through 4s, the middle school and the high school, build it on a allied health sort of thing. That relied on, of course, private industry being involved. And I told him I couldn't hold my tongue on some things. I think the board dropped the ball, and the community dropped the ball in making sure that happened. I think it is in the interest of industry to have that sort of workforce and to fund the resources to create the workforce that they say they want. They come in and get all these tax breaks, but they don't put anything in here to create what it is they say they want. And I think it's time for industry to do that sort of thing. I think it's time for the people to insist on the board at the staff level that they be accountable to implement things that they promised that they would 8 or 9 years ago. And just, because I might not be the floor again, I think it's incumbent upon the teachers to get involved too. It broke my heart in all of those negotiations we had leading up to that plan. I begged the teachers to come on board, and their leadership wouldn't do it. And it broke my heart, you know. These are the people that we are trusted to implement this plan at the level where it counts up the most. I support teachers, I do. I love them, I will do anything for them, okay? And I was very disappointed that they were not at the table when that was negotiated.
Thank you, Chancellor. Mr.
I was just going to pick
Mr. Kendall, did you drop the ball?
No, I didn't drop the ball. I'm still trying to throw the ball. But I think Richard makes a very good point. In 1998, and I was there then too, there were a lot of processes. Even the enhanced option schools that we talked about. I remember when I first went to Richard, I was chair of the board at that time, and he was the plaintiff's attorney, and we talked about that, and he liked to hit the floor, and he said, "Hey, what are you talking about? Enhanced options, poor schools, etc." And the concept was that we would have enhanced programs with the option of parents from all over the community to attend those. That didn't happen. That really didn't happen. We did some of the things, but we didn't do them all. The thin magnets that we talk about, and I read that in the report, many parents believe any magnet is a great place, but a thin magnet has to have some substance. And I think that's what we really need to focus on in the school, where choice is really choice based upon what is best for my child. And I think that's what the young lady was asking. So, thin magnets we have, now academic magnets were designed to top in the country by all standards. Even Hillsborough High School was rated one of the top high schools. So, the gentleman who asked the question about private schools, we've got we got the best school system in terms of comparing to private schools, and I mean that. We got the best teachers. And I don't know if anybody here in private school is going to get mad at me, but we got the best teachers, we have the best resources. There are many other reasons why parents choose private schools that have nothing to do with the academic performance within our school system.
Thank you, sir. We're going to take the questions of those persons standing, and of course the young lady that's sitting. I'm going to take yours, but I'm going to start to my left, and then we'll take you next. And we're going to have to end it after that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anika Sanders. I'm a recent graduate of Vanderbilt Law School.
Excuse me 1 second. We are having a reception following this out in the lobby, and so we're going to be just a few minutes late, but there will be a reception, and you can communicate more afterwards. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I do education reform work. And my daughter is also a third grader at Rose Bay Elementary, which is a neighborhood school. And didn't have much choice where that came. But my question is, does it seem that the solution to segregated schools is how the reform sort of relinquish the school district from its responsibility to provide, to make sure that children experience mutual respect, understanding, and knowledge, the things that you referred to?
Thank you. Just kind of open the question.
I think housing reform is only part of the comprehensive set of solutions. So I didn't mean to rest it all on housing reform. I was only underscoring the way in which segregated housing patterns and some really poor quality public housing exacerbates the problems of poverty. But I think you're absolutely right that it involves a much broader comprehensive set of responses. I would also underscore the issue of, some of the panelists have talked about the magnets, the issue of innovation. Again, this is a dynamic community, a creative community, and the magnet schools that were established under the court order at an earlier time were some of the most creative solutions, some of the most creative educational environments. We have so many resources, whether it's the creative community, the arts and music community, and the health and business community, and we could be much more innovative in defining authentic choice around those assets. This is a resource-rich environment, and I think we have, in some quarters been painted as an environment or a community that has more deficits. It's really resource rich, and I would just want to underscore the ideas of diversity. Diversity is a resource. It's not a problem. And then I would underscore the economic assets and creative assets that are part of this community that could be then embedded in an authentic choice program that celebrates innovation and distinctiveness.
Mark, you want to add a little bit to that because I don't know how radical this is. I don't really think we can rezone our way out of this problem. I think those days are gone when you can draw some boundaries and expect people to get on a bus across town and go where you want them to go. Increasingly, the trend is public school choice, and parents are going to demand more and more of that. They're going to get the choice in the school system, they're going to leave the county. And so how do we get this to happen? How do we turn this around? And I think what the key area is getting more community involvement in our schools. For 20, 25, 30 years, a lot of times the sort of official attitude, or unofficial attitude really in the school system was, what happens in our walls, we take care of it, we don't really need the outside community coming in and helping. They've now gone 180 degrees and saying, we can't do it alone, we have to have the community involved in helping. But the problem is they haven't really figured out how to make that complete cultural change. And I think Chancellor Dane's point about getting the faith community involved, certainly the change, we want the business community to be more involved. I think the more we get people in our community, whether they're seniors, whether they have kids or not, whether they have kids in our schools or not, getting inside our schools and having them feel some ownership of the public school system is a key first step into getting more diversity down the road.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to say that we need to give this panel a round of applause. And I'd also like to thank Dan Cornfield and Stephanie Pruitt for facilitating this and making this happen for us. And that's Now, I want to make an announcement. We do have copies of the report at the registration table, so you can get that. We are going to have a reception. It is going on now, and we'd like you to please join us in the reception. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here today. We could carry this thing on for hours and hours because it is worthy of discussion. And we can't solve the problem today in just a few moments or a few hours. But in order that we understand it, are sensitive to the circumstances involving education and those challenges of education, we do need to have the discussion. We need to continue the discussion and utilize these resources, these studies, this research, and eventually come up with an answer so that education can be equal to all in all circumstances, anywhere we find them, anywhere we teach them. And we need to start it right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you very much.